Hello, I am Brian Foster, and welcome to my live stream on Sunday, April 25th, 2021. And today we're going to continue on our Sunday talks about the book Evolution in Two Worlds, Chapter 11, Existence of the Soul. So what do you mean by existence of the soul? We're talking about the paraspirit, or the spirit, which is connected to the paraspirit, which is connected to our physical body. So therefore, on the previous chapters, it's all been about the spirit world preparing the human animal, and of course, all from the antecedents of the humans, the simple organisms, the simple animals, insects, whatever it is, gets more and more complicated, guided by spirits. Evolution is kind of a guided evolution, intelligent creation, as some people call it, by teams of spirits who will make modifications to our NDA and to improve the species. Now, the spirit world had to improve the species slowly over billions of years in order for it to have a true free-willed spirit. Now, all animals, everything has a spirit associated with it, but that spirit is a pretty primitive piece of logic that's learning how to control that simple animal, and it goes higher and higher, learning how to control more and more complex organisms, until they get to the point where they have the sophistication and going through, I don't know how many millions of lives, to how they're given the gift of free will, and they can control us, a human. That's what we're doing. Our spirit, through our paraspirit, connected all throughout our body, is controlling our body to a certain extent. A lot of it's automatic, but our paraspirit is connected to every piece of our body. In fact, let me show that to you very quickly, because I want everyone to understand. And I've shown this many times, but you never know how many new people are on, and I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to understand how this works. Now, so the picture I'm showing on the screen shows the spirit, which is a logical, like an application, which exists in the spirit realm. And you can look at the spirit realm in a couple different ways. You can look at it as in objects and, kind of a geometric shape surrounding the earth, and ever increasing levels of heaven around the earth, and then levels of heaven above that. But the solar system, above the galaxy, who knows how high it goes? I certainly don't. The spirits that talk to the mediums that I've read don't either. But that is connected. The spirit is connected to the paraspirit, which then is actually connected to every cell of your body. And of course, that conforms to the force centers, which are like chakras, which they describe in the a lot of Hindu and Buddhist philosophy. So let's get into where we're at on evolution in two worlds. So this is chapter 11, Existence of the Soul, and this section is called Morphologic and Moral Evolution. I'll start. Morphologic evolution proceeded in tandem with moral evolution. The skull slowly evolved to control our brain. The arms became more refined. The hands acquired undreamed of tactile excellence, and all the senses progressed in refinement and perception. However, with the advent of responsibility, which had separated them from the direct guidance of their benefactors. So what does that mean? That's interesting. Let's read the next sentence. Of the greater life, human beings begin multiple endeavors of progress in the area of the spirit. Okay, so we've been endowed with responsibility. What does that mean? So when you're an animal, when you're lower than a human, and of course, now there's not it's not like a hard dividing line between a human and a dog. A dog, for instance, there are other things like elephants and dolphins and so forth, but a dog will have like no free will whatsoever. No, they'll have some free will and some thought, but mostly they'll have instinct. And they're not actually judged on anything. They don't have the responsibility of having a soul with free will, is what they mean, whereas we do. The animals are starting to exercise that. They're starting to learn, right? Because everybody knows their pets have their own little quirks, their own characteristics. And they'll decide to do certain things or not, depending on how they feel, not just by instinct. That of course, is part of it too. But they have their own personalities. God bless them. And of course, just to make sure everybody knows, animals have spirits too. So if you have an animal that you love, that could be with you in your life after life. In fact, one time, Chico Xavier, that great medium, he died in 2004, I believe. He was sitting next to a woman, and he said, "You know how long you've had that dog?" And she had like a little lap dog. And she goes, "Oh, about 2 years." He goes, "No, you've had that dog for 500 years. That dog's followed you in life after life." And so they will happen. In fact, I talked to a woman, and she said that when her husband was very, very sick, this cat in their apartment, it was like a closed condominium, showed up at their door, and then just stayed with her husband the whole time. And they went through everybody in that like condominium complex. Said, did you lose a cat?" They go, "No, no, no one lost a cat. Somehow that cat showed up." And I believe, and she believed too, her husband finally died, but they said that cat just like knew exactly what to do and how to comfort them. So I believe that cat had been part of their household in previous lives and came at the right time. I'm sure other people have stories of their pets being there at the right time. But now we're talking about humans. So we are responsible. What does that mean, you're responsible? That means you're accountable for your actions. Don't we tell that to children? When they're children and they're 2 or 3, or they write on the walls, or we kind of can't do that, right? Kind of try to guide them, but we know they're pretty primitive. They're cute, but they're pretty primitive what they want and don't want. But as you get older, you start introducing the idea of being responsible and accountable. And therefore, when you're accountable, if you do something wrong, what happens? You have to pay the consequences. And that's why we are in a planet of atonement, because when we do wrongs, we pay the consequences. It could be in this life, but it could be in the next. Let me continue on. In their personal cultivation of free questioning, early human beings gave daring wings to thought, along with its greater power of imagination, facilitating mentalization and the disengagement of the spiritual body, whose cells, in connection with those of the physical body, thus acquired automaticity in partial emancipation during sleep, so that the soul could access teachings of a higher order. And we're told that by many different mediums from Spiritists, is that when you sleep, you go to the spirit world, and that sometimes you have very advanced and high-level conversations in your learning. And for instance, for a while there, I had dream after dream. I was like on this college campus, and I would go to a lecture. I wouldn't understand anything. I just knew I was in a lecture, and then I just knew I was walking across and going to another lecture, and I don't remember anything besides that. And then a medium told me, "Well, that just means you're being trained for something in the spirit world. Right now, you're not allowed to remember it, right? Some people can't remember these things, but you're being trained for something. I don't know what, but that's what happens." And of course, other people have dreams where they go into the lower zone. They walk. They have pleasure with other lower spirits, and they're not learning anything, but hopefully they will learn something eventually. Okay, I'll continue. Human beings now hold within the framework of their own organs the inheritance of millions of different stages in the lower kingdoms. And basically, they feel inclined to live in the environment of the other mammals that surround them, with the instinct completely dominating them without restrictions. However, through irreversible evolution, love increases with their being, suggesting new characteristics for their existence. So, a tiger, when it's hungry, will eat something. And if you're their master, this has happened, right? People who train tigers and feed them and very nice to them, someday they'll just turn on them, right? And injure them or kill them. And that's happened because they're still living with their instinct. But as they're saying, is that through irresistible evolution, you start to feel this love. And then when you're given free will, you actually feel love. Now you can say, well, but people kill each other. They people like Stalin and Mao have killed millions of people, put them in gulags and concentration camps. How is that love? Well, a lot of people are still denying it. It's still there. It's causing them anxiety and stress. but it's there, but it's not being utilized yet. Then the next section is notion of rights. Due to their attachments to their offspring, they institute ownership of the strips of land upon which they carve out their dwellings. And attending to that same root of affection, they draw up certain rules of conduct so as not to impose on their neighbors offenses and harm that they would not like impose on themselves. Thus, the unexpected happens. Primitive humans who have no intention of abandoning the appetites and pleasures of the animal experience create restraints that will control their freedom in order to ennoble their primitive character. Establishing tyrannical possessiveness over everything they deem to be their own, they stop taking advantage of what belongs to their neighbor for fear of facing the penalty of opening themselves up to harsh punishment. In this way, the notions of right arises based on respected obligations. So humans are just primitive. They're like your 2-year-old that just say, I want that. Or they'll take it from another 2-year-old or 1-year-old. They'll just take it out of their hands. But they're being slowly trained. Now, if you're trained in one life to be more responsible and you come to the next life, you don't lose it all. You can say, well, I have no memory of it, but you have your conscience and your instinct. So let's go with the awakening of the conscience, because your conscience stays with you in life after life as well as your instinct. So that your conscience starts filling in, saying like, because it's a set of divine laws, but it doesn't fill in like the law library that you need, but it starts to. So this section is the awakening of the conscience. As a consequence of this transformation, they interpret their presence on earth from a new perspective. Like the adult individual who leaves the cycle of childhood behind, unconcern and nomadicism no longer attract them. They now know that birth in the flesh is vested with a more profound meaning. Little by little, they understand that life records their personal deeds. They know that they can refuse to lend a hand to neighbors in need, but they also know that their neighbors can also refuse to lend theirs when misfortune comes knocking on their own door. They realize they are free to kill their enemy, but they also know that their enemy can kill them or make their pathway miserable in return. They perceive that their gesture and attitudes for others create attitudes and gestures in others toward them. With this new set of observations, a more wondrous and rich mental life is revealed to them, and through this more intense inner life, they portray with relative surety the ideas of the selfless spirits that watch over their pathway. From then on, they do not limit their existence to the journey from cradle to grave, from cause and effect perspective. They extend it to beyond the grave that holds their worn out or useless physical envelope. Incorporating responsibility, the conscious awakens, and through an awakened conscience, the principles of action and reaction function with precision within human beings, ensuring them freedom of choice and mechanically imposing on them the result of it both in the physical sphere and the spirit world. So behind that, there's a lot of information. Now, you can say, well, a lot of people ignore their conscience. A lot of people are just mean as heck and will do things. Well, those people are still learning, but give it time. And they also say they also know that they do not limit their existence from cause and effect perspective. They extend it beyond the grave that holds their worn out or useless physical envelope. So what does that mean? It means that as people are reincarnated over and over, they're incarnated, they learn some lessons in life, they're predestined trials, or learning that what they did to others wrongly, and then now it's being done to them, they don't like it. And their conscience matures, and they gather new experiences. They go to the spirit world. Now, the spirit world, through the law of being where you belong, right? Like goes with like. They will then they may be in the lower zone with other criminals like them. They may be in the dark abyss with really mean criminals and very bad people, and that will teach them something. They either will be born with trying to say, I don't want to be there again, or they might come bad again, which of course they'll have to go through some pretty tough trials. And so therefore they will learn, or they could be in some lower levels of heaven and they will learn something there too. That instinct and that conscience, as they build it up, will come with them in the next life. People don't retrogress, right? You're not an advanced spirit, and your next life you're a raging lunatic who kills everybody. No, you go, you may park, and you may do some things wrong in one life, right? But it's not going to be like a major change of your character and personality. In fact, what we are told is that when you're a child, you're kind of this unmolded clay, and your parents, your parents' task is to help you spiritually and to grow and to become a better person. And then your true character, although it's been modified somewhat because now you've learned, hopefully you've learned in a good family, comes between 15 and 20, 21. And that character will come out. It's probably why the teenage years are so difficult, because you're not only your physical and hormonal, but your true character is coming out, and it's interpreting and being modified by what you've gone through as a young adolescence or infant child. So it's a lot of things going on, and their conscience starts coming up, and their instinct starts coming up. There's a lot to process. It's tough. Let's go to the next section. The larva and the child. In this regard, it is important to remember, although there are obvious differences, the similarity that life points out between the changes in the existence of the human soul and the changes experienced by insects that undergo complete metamorphosis. The larva that leaves the eggs embarks on a new period of development, which may last for a long time, as happens with the ephemera, displaying at first the membrane of the still soft body and retaining in the digestive tract the remnants of the yolk from the embryonic phase, to begin after excretion the process of feeding and digestion. The newborn child, on the other hand, leaves the uterus and enters a new phase of evolution, which is firmed up over the course of a few years. At first tender and fragile, it retains its own organization, the blood resources given to it by the endosomatic process in the maternal organism. Resources newborn child will eliminate afterwards as much as possible, generating its own. And we're told by other spirits that the mother's blood is really influencing the child for its first 7 years. The newborn child doesn't kind of get rid of all of the remnants of the blood from its mother till 7 years. So that mother's connected to that child for a long, long time. And so what they're telling us is, okay, the newborn child, is like an egg, right? You've left the uterus, and you're trying to get your own organization going. Your spirit is connected through it by the paraspirit, yet it's still helped by some resources by the mother and of course, also we were told that your guardian angel is always watching a child, right? They're just like 24 hours. They may not be there physically, they'll be there very close. In fact, I think mostly they're there physically, if I remember. But then as you get older, your guardian angel can look at it from distance and say, okay, well, this next day, nothing's going to happen to you. I can just watch you from afar. But I will be alerted if something's going to happen to you in the next hour or so. Then I can either come there or I can ask for help, right? But a child is watched very carefully. That's why it always cracks me up, because, when you have a baby and they're like 1 or 2 years old and they're just walking, it's like, half the time you expect them to walk into some pole or something, right? But it's always like they look at the last moment and miss it. Sometimes it can happen, but most of the times it's always like the last moment. But I'm sure that's a guardian angel telling them, okay, don't hit that pole. So they're very precious. Okay, let me carry on. Advancing in the execution of the plan outlines for its existence. The larva grows and uses the nutrient materials that ensure the growth of its body according to the species. It sheds its skin and processes that is necessary to accommodate changes in size. Fulfilling the imperatives of its life, the child develops, taking its nourishment needs to expand its organic machine, starting to accomplish by itself, that is, at the command of the mind, the cellular renewal of the tissues and organs that constitute its somatic field, so that its physical form adjusts to the mold of its spiritual body. And so, of course, now, in our planet of atonement, it takes a long time to mature. Now, not from this book, but from other books talking about more advanced planets, that within a year, say, of our time, a person can have the maturity and intellectual capacity of a 30-year-old. So as we go to more advanced planets, the time of childhood will get shorter and shorter. That time of being, lost in the world and unsure of everything you do will be shorter and shorter. And also what will happen is we go to a more advanced planet, because we're on that now, right? We're a planet of atonement, but we are on the first stages of moving towards a planet of regeneration. Lifespans will get longer, and that lifespans will happen so that just a few years before you die, then you'll really start looking like you're aging. But you'll grow very quickly to be an adult form, and then you'll stay that way, maybe for 100. I've read some pints where people will live for 500 years, until just a couple of years before you're ready to go, which you'll be mentally ready because you'll be closer to the spirit world. And then you'll start aging a little bit, and then you'll leave your physical body. And people say, that's no big deal. I'm ready to go back to the spirit world and try something new. Okay, so then he has this section, Metamorphosis of the Insect. I don't know if that is that important, so I'm going to skip that one. Okay. Then the next section is spiritual histogenesis. Human beings, too, after the childhood period, go through expressive stages of inner renewal, until they reach corporeal maturity, despite displaying the same outer form. Only after the exhaustion of the vital force over the course of life, through the old age, or resulting from disease, are they ready for a more profound transformation. During this characteristic period of cellular sunset, aging, or irreversible disease, they display a gradual lessening of activity and can no longer tolerate nourishment. Little by little, their physiological activities decline and inertia replaces their movements. So it's about aging. We've all seen very old people just like lose all appetite. They just let themselves decline. And there's a reason for that, because it's their time to go. And as I like to point out, is when someone dies, we shouldn't have this funeral like, oh, that person, I wish that person was still here with us, and be sad and be regretful. No, you should say, God bless you. You've escaped. You're done with this physical world. You're in a much better place. I hope you learn a lot. I hope you have fun. Don't worry about us here on earth. We're all going through our trials. Be positive. Always be positive, because if you're by being negative and by trying to pull them back, you're not allowing them to ascend in heaven. You're keeping them on the earth. So please it's like sending your kid to school. When you send your kid to kindergarten, you go, oh, you're going to have a terrible time, and I'm going to miss you so much. And of course, you're setting up a terrible experience in kindergarten, right? You want them to be happy. And you say, no, it's going to be exciting. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to make new friends. Be the same way at a funeral. So, oh, this is great for you. It's like when I used to go on my mom's side to the Irish funerals. People were happy. They were drinking, right? It's like, you're in a better place. Okay, let me carry on. From that point on, they are almost always confined to bed and horizontal supine repose in preparation for the liberating endeavor. Thus, the time comes when they become immobilized in a cadaveric state, mummifying like a chrysalis, but enveloping themselves in the depths of their being with the threads of their own thoughts. They maintain themselves in this cocoon of mental forces that have been woven with their dominant reflexes, ideas, or mental secretions. This period may vary from minutes, hours, days, months, or decades. So there is this wonderful part in one of the books by G. Owen. And he talked about spirits coming to help this older lady to die, to leave her body. And they were all surrounding her. And then, of course, they had the physical people surrounding her, but they couldn't see the spirits. And they helped her. They kind of cut the paraspiritual cord, right? The opposite of the umbilical cord. And she woke up and she goes, well, who are you? And then she kind of caught on it, goes, well, I'm my dad. Goes, I feel so much better. And then she goes, can you grant me one wish? They go, sure, what is it? Well, can you tell everybody here that I'm much better? I feel much better now. And they said, okay, we'll try. And then they said, well, we tried, but there's only one man that kind of got a hint of it, but then he kind of dismissed it, right, as something strange. But that's what she asked for as she left her body, and she felt much better. And eventually, they'll take her to heaven, and from looking old, she will mold herself into how she wants to look, maybe 30s, 40s, or 20s. Who knows what she wants? Okay, let me continue. During the cycle of categorization of the somatic form under the dynamic direction of the spiritual body, they undergo extreme alterations, which in essence correspond to histolysis of the physical cells. At the same time, they develop new organs through the phenomenon we may call, for lack of equivalent term, spiritual histogenesis, utilizing the living elements disaggregated from the cytoplasmic tissue, your living tissue, in which they'll then remain connected to the physiological hive, reduced to collapse or decomposition. This is interesting. So somehow they create something new. Histolysis, or the destructive process during discarnation, results from the activity of chemical catalysts and other resources from the organic world. Impelled by the levels of degeneration, they lead to tissue death. Correct. From the spiritual body perspective, they most especially affect the morphology of the muscles and the digestive system, but have little influence on the nervous and circulatory systems. Through this spiritual change, the cytoplasmic tissues finally rid themselves of some of their characteristics, temporarily returning, as if heating the involuntary process, to the condition of multiform embryonic cells that divide through karyokinesis, forming under the conditions of the shape of the spiritual body according to the type imposed by the mind. So this is interesting. So what I read from this, it's allowing you to withdraw some from your physical body, but then you're more connected to the spirit. And therefore, they're getting ready to become a spirit again. That's the next section, discarnation of the spirit. Only then, when the events of death occur, do discarnate human beings, fully self-renewed, abandon their physical body. However, since they are often tightly imprisoned within the cocoon of their dominant thoughts, when they have not endeavored to renew themselves in the recesses of the spirit, they display a new specific weight according to the density of their mental life. They have new means with to nourish themselves, means which are much like fluid magnetic suction tubes, but without having completely lost the characteristic oral apparatus. These tubes are antennae of subtle matter reflected in incarnate individuals and are expressed in their common aura as elongated radicals of a dynamic essence, exteriorizing their specific radiations through these tubes or antennae. We assimilate or repel emanations from other things or beings around us, as well as those from us and to one another. So that is what probably a lot of people look at is when they see a person's aura, right? Where they see glow around them. And that is kind of their antennae of being able to absorb stimuli and information from the spirit world. And it's probably pretty well sublimated, it's decreased during our strong physical life. But then as we begin to pass over and our body decays, that aura of ours becomes stronger and more able to interpret the things of the spirit world, while our ability to connect to the physical world decreases. So it's preparing us, right? It's just like a baby coming out and using their lungs for the first time, because oxygen gave to them from their mother to the umbilical cord. But then that baby cries, umbilical cord is cut, baby cries, lung fills up, and they're now starting to be connected to the physical world. The opposite happens when you pass over. And in fact, we're told by spirits, especially by Leon Denis, is that dying is much less traumatic than being born. It's not a bad thing. So that's something to keep in mind. So now the next section is the continuation of existence. Now, all of this, what I'm talking to also, I just want to make sure that we know, is I cover in my books. In fact, if you're interested in Spiritism, as I'm talking about this, I recommend that you can get this book for free on my site in PDF. Just go to my site, nwspiritism.com. Let me bring that up. There we go. And you can just download it. and PDF. It's also available on Kindle and Audible and paperback, but it's free on PDF. I also have that in French. I have another book, The Problem is the Solution, in French, free on PDF. And then How to Live, that book is, you can buy that in Kindle, paperback, Audible in English, but I also have it in French. So let me continue on. But I recommend this. This is a good introduction. The continuation of existence. Despite the phenomenon of discarnation, the human personality, albeit metamorphosized, continues after the grave, the educational stage that it began at birth, without losing its own identity, thus collecting experiences of corporeal life, discarnation, and metamorphosis on the extra-physical plane. So your life never ends. And you are who you are. I mean, I remember when I was before I knew Spiritism, I was thinking, well, okay, if my soul lives on after I'm dead, but what happens if someone shoots me in the head and my brain is just like mash? Am I just a blubbering idiot when I die? And the answer is no, because everything, that brain is just this organic thing. And so even people who are special and limited on earth are just a very normal spirit, that they're going through this difficult trial, but they could be smarter than anybody, right? They could be an extremely intelligent spirit, but for some reason they have to go through this trial. So that's important to know. But when you see someone severely limited like that, always give them a little prayer and say, God bless you. I know you're going through a hard trial. Okay. Let me carry on here. It says, now, hence, we can see that the individual's existence in reincarnations is embodied not only on the earth, where he or she attends to the cultivation of sentiments, words, attitudes, and actions that characterize him or her, but also in the spirit world, where the individual incorporates the reaping of the sowing carried out in the physical world, encompassing the learning experiences necessary for the sublime ascent to which he or she is destined. So they're just telling us this is all part, right? We get a soul, we become responsible adults, where we are accountable for our own actions. Well, the same exists, and we're accountable for our actions in previous lives. It could be kind of a downer, especially when I've been told about my previous life where I've done bad things, but that's the way it goes, right? We have to go through those trials, and we have to learn. So if you'd like to learn more about the spirit world and where we're at and what does it all mean, I recommend the spirits book on PDF, of course, but the Spiritism 101, I mean. But then there's also the spirits book, and you can get that by Anko Deck. That's kind of the headwaters, right? He codified Spiritism. You can find that on PDF. You can find all of his books on PDF. That's how I found Spiritism, by looking for that and looking for, how can my destiny be foretold? And that threw me for a loop. And then I found, oh, okay, there's something very superior to us, watching over us and directing us at a level that was unimaginable to me before. I admit it threw me for a complete loop. How involved the spirit world is in our life. It's just amazing. And that put me on a multi-year quest to understand what is the spirit realm. And that's why I've written, this is my 15th book. I've written other books, but this is really kind of the compilation of what is the spirit realm. What are the universes? The physical universe, the spiritual universes. There's difficult dimensions within the physical universe. Who is Jesus? What are the levels? What's a spirit? How does the spirit ascend? How are we guided here on earth? What is our future on earth? All those things I have put into this book. So I hope they help you understand why you're here, why you're going through the trials, because that is really what I wish for people to understand. And however you understand that, that's great. But there is a purpose to everything that happens to you. Maybe not perfectly 100%, but 99.9% of what happens to you when people are mean to you or someone betrays you or whatever, that is usually almost 100%, maybe not quite, caused by actions you've previously done in other lives. And so when that happens to you, just go, okay, what can I learn from this? I'll never do that what that person did to me, right? Because Spiritism boiled down to its easiest concept is the golden rule. Do unto others what you'd want them to do unto you. And if we did that through life after life, we would ascend so rapidly, it would be amazing. But of course, it's hard. And also we have to listen to our conscience. And that's not easy either, because I am just, exhibit number one when I was younger of rationalizing why I shouldn't do that because it would benefit me in some way when it was not a good thing to do. So that's something else we need to all work on. And we're not just working on keeping our mouth shut and saying nice things. We're really working on what? Rewiring our brain, because thought is action in the spirit world. That's why Spiritism is so important to us, because you are incredibly powerful. And as you rise in heaven and you're this incredibly powerful being of creating with thought, do you think the spirit world is going to let, uneducated, undisciplined spirits like me roam the universe, causing havoc, thinking stupid thoughts wherever I'm at? No, I'm going to have to be trained first. I have to go through basic training. That's what we're here on Earth. So I hope this helps. Go out and study, talk to your friends, tell them about Spiritism, and be happy in where you're at, because a wonderful world awaits you. If you put the effort in to be a good enough person, you don't have to be perfect to go to heaven, you will not believe how happy and contented and ecstatic you will be in an area where you'll be immortal, you're not sick, people love you, people support you. It's all worth it. God bless.